you.
So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the third day of the Coimbra Sustainability Summit cycle of webinars. This is one of the 3 parallel sessions during today, focusing on the needs of manufacturing and sustainable cities to promote the Sustainable Development Goals. Our vision of this summit was to understand how the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations and the Green Deal from the European Union can inspire technology to create new value for society. So as agents of innovation, we need to do our part in addressing the societal challenges the planet faces and at least try to address some of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals defined by the United Nations in 2015 and the Green Deal. We would like to debate how new technology intersections, for instance, mainly 4 technologies, artificial intelligence, blockchain, Internet of Things, and cybersecurity, can support decent work and economic growth by creating new partnerships to achieve those goals. The themes that we will cover during the 2 weeks of the event are healthcare, agri-food manufacturing, and sustainable cities. On board, we have in our ecosystem representatives of a very diverse number of stakeholders. So we have inspiring leaders, researchers, and companies, such as the brilliant speakers we have today in our panel. We have also investors and the European Commission, who have a very important role as well during this summit. So basically, these are the goals of our summit. We would like to inspire innovative approaches because we think that the new innovative approaches facilitated by the use of the aforementioned technologies, AI, blockchain, IoT, and cybersecurity, can deliver better value to the society. We want to encourage and create new partnerships. So at the end, we would like also to invite you to connect to other participants within the summit. A little bit about the organization of this summit. The summit is supported by 4 European Horizon 2020 projects. The main sponsor of this initiative is a project called Diatomic. Diatomic is a network of digital innovation hubs that aims to establish a sustainable ecosystem to facilitate microelectronics and smart system integration-based innovation in 3 main sectors: agri-food, healthcare, and manufacturing. All of these sectors are under-digitized and are of prime importance for society and for the economy in Europe and globally. The other projects that are supporting this sustainability summit are Block IS, Blockchain Innovation Spaces, which aims to build an open and collaborative cross-border, cross-sectorial innovation ecosystem to foster the use of cutting-edge technology in 3 sectors: agri-food, logistics, and finance. We have Enrich, which is trying to fostering the collaboration between the EU and the US. We have MSEC, multi-layered technologies to ensure hyper-connected smart cities with blockchain, big data, cloud, and IT. And all of these projects have the main goal of supporting SMEs on the digitalization field. The cycle of webinars will be split in 2 weeks with distinct thematics. During the first week, which we have the 3rd day of the first week, the plenary members and attendees focus on debating the assessment of the needs of 4 sectors, emphasizing the dialogue on the importance of sustainable development goals in Green Deal, ethics, and partnerships for the definition of new solutions. The second week will try to raise the needs leveraged on the first week and invite technological companies and technology providers to provide their testimonials on how they are using the intersection of those technologies to create value and to understand better how the digital transformation will support our quality of life in the next 10 years. Diatomic, as one of the organizers of the Sustainability Summit, is the host of the debate of today about leveraging of the needs of manufacturing as sustainable cities. And this will be the first sectorial session. And next week, we will bridge this gap to how the intersection of the technologies will support those needs of manufacturing as sustainable city sector in the next 10 years on the 27th of May at 11 a.m. as similar to today. Until the end of the Sustainability Summit, attendees will also have the opportunity to participate on the tech panel focused on the impact of technology on the 25th of May, and the final public policies and funding opportunities plenary on the 29th of May. That aims to present the position of public policy and its links to sustainability and the Green Deal, as well as various public funding opportunities that will be available until the end of the year. Our summit is interactive. So we are using Poll Everywhere in order to ask questions and collect some answers from you. So either you can go to Poll Everywhere, enter Coimbra 2020 and participate and enjoy with us, or you can, with your mobile device, scan this QR code so you can also immediately join us. I will allow for 30 seconds for this scan to happen right now before moving on. So the first question that we have before our panel is, when you hear sustainable manufacturing or sustainable cities, what words come to your mind? Feel free to write the words that you have. So we have some interesting words: renewable, awareness, green, growth, technology, mobility. Great, thank you very much. So for our panel, the concept of today's panel is to look at the needs and challenges of manufacturing sector and cities to promote the Sustainable Development Goals and the Green Deal, especially Goal 7 and 9 for manufacturing and Goal 11 for sustainable cities. Before we start our panel discussions, I would like to highlight to all of you that you can ask your questions to the panel using the Q&A button in Zoom. So at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A button. If you click on it, you can ask your questions to our panelists. And I'm glad to introduce to you our exciting panel speakers who have joined us today, which we are very thankful to discuss these topics. We will start today with Mr. Stefan Buttner, the Director, Global Strategy and Impact at the Institute for Energy Efficiency in Production in Germany. And he chairs the newly established United Nations Economic Commission for Europe Task Force on Industrial Energy Efficiency. In today's panel, Mr. Buttner's speech would be about the industrial decarbonization and its challenges. So, Mr. Buttner, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everybody. First of all, this topic is rather broad, and I'm titling it with the needs, issues, challenges, and also barriers for sustainability in the manufacturing sector. However, rather than having such a heavy title, okay, control is here. I want to rephrase it in the approaches that are there, the experiences that have been made, opinions by the manufacturing industry on those topics, opportunities that arise from this topic, as well as actions that we have already seen. Now, the question is, what is sustainability in the first place? What does it mean? Does it mean staying below 2 degrees Celsius of global warming? Does it mean meeting the Sustainable Development Goals? And or does it mean sufficiency in terms of creating an environment where our society can run as an infinite system? This means you may have heard of the Earth Sufficiency Day, that in 1979 was in the end of October, and last year it was in the end of May for Germany, meaning that we have already used up our annual allowance of resources Earth provided us with. You may have heard that, or you certainly heard that over the news, and that is the corona pandemic aside, that we had a severe growth of population on this planet over the past century. We have increasing temperature, and due to both temperature and number of people, increasing water scarcity due to our industrialized society and emergence of humanity, we have an increasing number of global CO2 emissions that is found to be harmful for climate. And all factors combined, we have land degradation, we have not enough space, and we need to find solutions, dramatic solutions, to make sure that we can continue as a society in the first place. And to get there, there's one solution or one element that I raised, and that is the Sustainable Development Goals. That I, however, refer a bit broader than just to the one that says industry sector, which is number 9. I also refer to the one that is about the factor of energy itself, and I consider energy as the energy we consume, but also the energy we manage not to consume. And in such a system, which is rather complicated and where we need to find a solution that is integrating the macro, the meso, and the micro level into each other, making use of whatever the others do not need anymore. Therefore, it's important from our perspective to integrate things into each other. And therefore, I also put in SDG 11 on cities. The way we utilize the resources and make sure that we can reuse them and develop smart manufacturing techniques such as biologization will enable us to ensure the sustainable consumption production patterns we need. So for example, do we need to continue to mine for specific raw materials, or would it not be more effective or easier to get X amount of grams per ton of ore? Or is it easier to get X amount of gram from a ton of computer scrap? In order to have a planet remaining SDG 13, the urgent action to combat climate change is hence of the essence. But I'm wondering, are we already making use of our potentials in getting there? And how can we achieve this in the first place? That leads to the question of whether existing policies, existing programs, existing legislation, management approaches, or also thought patterns in the corporate world take account of the various realities that we face, of the various sectors, company sizes, institutional sizes, countries, cultures. And there I just wanted to briefly highlight that industry is not industry everywhere the same way. Even if we look just at the European Union, we see that the share of final energy consumption of the industrial sector ranges from 8% in Malta to 44% in Finland. And the country that you perhaps know as the manufacturing country, Germany, is ranging in the upper midfield at 29%, at 28%. Now, and also in public conversation, we often hear that we need to act on the transportation sector. We need to act on our buildings to make sure to reduce the emissions involved. And the perspective I want to share with you today is one point. If we have the long-term sustainability, the net decarbonization in Europe by 2050, for example, in our minds, isn't it important to realize that trains, ships, cars, planes originally are designed on the drawing board of a factory? Insulation material, windows, designs for buildings, at least the larger ones, are designed and built and sourced in factories. And it's like this with nearly everything that is not exactly 100% handmade, that essentially the original decision on the performance, on the sourcing, on the ability to recycle is made up on the drawing board in the factories right now. And that is why we consider the industrial sector crucial to be able in the first place to decarbonize by 2050. And that is why we are talking, at least I'm talking today, about the elements that I consider crucial for the industrial sector. And that is understanding the industrial demand side. We are already doing a lot in the industrial sector. So what is the issue? The interest is clear, the solutions exist, and so do good approaches. Implementation, however, still remains low. One of the reasons is that there are many stakeholders and many communication gaps. We do have 27 different manufacturing sectors. We do have 4 different company sizes. We have companies of a completely diverse energy intensity. But what we also need to consider is that in companies, you do have the leadership level, you have the controlling and financial people, you do have the plant manager, you have the energy manager, you have the experts, and outside that system, you have the politicians. All of them speak their different individual language. They have their different, let me say, optimization function that they were told to pursue to deliver a good job. But what are the barriers arising from that? Different aims, not understanding each other sufficiently. For example, the top management's main focus is on high production volumes. There may be lack of adequate in-house skills. There may be inadequate performance indicators to be able to judge things. And also outside the fence, the policy framework lacks often end user understanding. So for example, it is quite a difference whether I have to do an optimization of my core processes versus just the dwelling around it. It's a difference being mandated to perform an energy audit from actually implementing the recommendations from it. And often policy doesn't know sufficiently about the details of the diverse industrial sector. So for example, the real issues are that funding programs have proven to be often not be tailored to the actual needs. It is not, as one would think, that big of an issue to get financing in many places. It's the leadership decision to go for it. And to be cognizant of the risks that are often keeping decision makers away. And elements such as CO2 tax, which is to start in Germany from next year, January. If, for example, companies have to pay lots of money on CO2 tax, and there's no mechanism designed to allow them to get rid of the emissions in the first place, they will have paid the tax, but have no financial means left to get rid of the reason for the emissions in the first place. And all over that, efficiency is not difficult, it's just complicated. And the real potential is just waiting. Therefore, we need to take a much closer look at the demand side to understand how people act, how people decide, and what they value. We are doing this for quite some years now with a broad partnership network, and I can say that we started that again yesterday for Germany, which is the energy efficiency index of the German industry, where we do ask on average 900 to 1,000 manufacturing companies on their stand towards different positions. Just one example here on the topic of behavior training awareness. Only if you have the buy-in of all your workforce, plans can work out completely. Energy intense companies have reported to us that actually the behavior component is a bigger issue because it was assumed that the workforce may think that their behavior doesn't matter considering the huge energy intake of the core processes. What we find critical here is that the competency related measures have been implemented to a larger extent in large companies a longer time ago, but with a decreasing amount in smaller companies where it hasn't happened, it's not planned for the future, and that is one of the critical the critical elements to create the ethos of change, to be able to do that. So how do we trigger such decision? How do we get the leadership level to decide for efficiency? There, a finding of the index was that, for example, when considering the factor of energy efficiency, the owners, the executive management, and the production managers significantly less often consider efficiency an important factor in their optimization function. We therefore performed a project to find out why and how, because the solutions are virtually all available. There's no lack of technology. It's a matter of taking the decision and implement action. So what factors contribute to trigger the demand side to take decision? That project was focusing on SMEs, but what we found was that the element of embedding efficiency into the corporate culture is important. It needs to be part of a continuous part of the leadership process. It is like in a clockwork where turning many wheels a little bit makes it much easier to get the clockwork running than just turning on one tiny wheel. So therefore the variety of practices boosts efficiency success, and staff behavior is critical. So we figured that, for example, if you have a proposal scheme, the measures proposed by the workforce are twice as often overperforming than measures proposed by any other role within the company. And of course, society and environment significantly influence decisions. For example, there was an E-Fellows and a YouGov study indicating that both existing workforce but also starters deem it rather relevant that their current or future employer does take care of the factor sustainability. For new workforce, this even means it's more important to them than the starting salary. So I indicated that there is already some good examples, and there are many different ways of going there. It may either be a decision for efficiency, it may be going into a completely new way of manufacturing one's product, making more use of what's left, and we're going to hear about this more later, and making sure that everything integrates and works well with each other, where energy flexibility comes into play. So what does it mean? Typically, you only take a decision when you can estimate the outcome, but at these uncertain times, how do I know whether my sector will still be able to sell that product in a few years' time? What do I do when the expected payback of an energy efficiency intervention is longer than the time I can use the machine for example, in the computer chip industry? So therefore, there are some examples by companies that just go the risk and decide by principle. The more companies do that, the more they will also feel confident. And Novartis did that and said they felt frightened in the beginning, but they gained confidence and also pride. Other companies say, how can we judge our different manufacturing sites? Because they're producing completely different elements and goods. So therefore, we developed with Voith Turbo a means using existing data from companies to be able to compare the ambition and the efforts at the individual sites with each other. New production methods, which is rather a big one, and the conversion in steel production to hydrogen is still a way further down the line. However, that will also require lots of renewables. If we look at the renewables, all German steel production, if that was transferred to hydrogen, we would need 12,000 additional wind turbines just for that. Also, if we look at the industrial sector as a whole, it consumes 45% of German electricity. Electricity only makes up 30% of industrial energy use. But if we wanted to do this sectoral integration that many governments call for, we have the issue that, that already now the share of renewable electricity may be 42%, but that's not even meeting the demands of industry. And lastly, renewables are volatile in their generation. So there, the heavy energy users can help avoiding the massive needs for compensation payments when renewable electricity cannot be fed in. So turn from the evil player that gets special treatment to the white knight of energy transition by being able to take up the abundant electricity. Some companies went ahead last year and said, okay, we're becoming zero carbon, net zero carbon. And Bosch said by 2020. So we found that striking, and at the end of their marketing video clip, they said it can be done now. So that inspired us to see, can it be done? Can it be done now? And we asked, using the energy efficiency index, what companies' stand is regarding decarbonization measures in principle. So we found that only 4% of companies participating are not undertaking any measures to decarbonize. And more than 50% of companies, irrespective of size, take internal measures. So this is optimization on-site and generation of energy on-site. When we look not at company size, but at energy intensity, we see that the less energy intensive, the more the supply chain should assist in the optimization. This is because typically you do have the energy intensive elements that emit emissions in those sectors on site. You cannot really externalize that. But we can also see that in this sector, efficiency measures are by far above average the choice. When we look about the question of developing new products, is energy, is resource consumption and footprint considered? We see that there's a stark difference, and the inactivity, so doing nothing, increases with energy intensity. Also because it's in the nature of the process or the products in that sector where you have typical limitations financially, technically, to be able to take account of that factor. If we look at the crucial question of carbon neutrality, we were positively surprised that overall there is 60% of companies striving towards net zero carbon. And we saw that the small micro companies aside, that is the same for all company sizes. For the micro companies, they need help because they significantly more often have economic reasons and technical reasons for not being able to do so. If we look at the energy intensity, we see the expected picture for the energy intensive sector, meaning economic and technical reasons, where a larger intervention needs to take place, such in the steel industry. Now, we asked them also by when, and we were surprised, positively surprised, that 2/3 of those 60% of companies want to become net zero carbon by 2025 already. What does it mean? In 5 years, those companies, pre-corona, of course, want to be net zero carbon. This also means that 50% of the intended measures for the next 30 years will happen in the next 5 years. And that causes severe challenges for the system, because how do we supply a sufficient amount of decarbonized energy, right? And there the key is a mixture of different means. So what motivates companies to decarbonize? How do they decide what to prioritize? Is it the CO2 avoidance cost, the investment sum? How do they decide on the measures? Is it the experience, for example, and how much are they planning to do locally. The local element is crucial because of one simple fact, going back to the steel example. We simply wouldn't be able to generate enough green energy in the next 5 years to allow companies to be able to do that. So the ambitions may be cut off. So therefore, it's crucial to establish what the so-called decarbonizability factor is, the amount of the percentage of emissions that can be avoided on site. And is there enough? Yeah, is there enough resources in the first place? So these are things that we started asking German companies today in the energy barometer. These are questions I asked the companies here in the call to give their opinion on. And we start doing that in 88 countries within the next 2 weeks, roughly, in 10 different languages. In order to make it happen on the ground, there are many different solutions, and I click through them very fast. You can review the slides later. There are misobservations, for example, lighting promises big impact. However, lighting costs make up only 2% of the energy costs. Where the big fishes are is high temperature heat pumps, innovative technologies, but their return on invest is 16 years. So what are the solutions to get these big things going? Intervention points, how do I identify measures? For that I need skilled personnel, for that I need to give others access to my technology. I may not want that. I may sink into big data, not seeing the individual thing I can do, particularly having this 5-year time span in mind. And what are the next big things? The next big things is, how do I become self-sustainable with renewables? I can do that by being as energy efficient as possible with a flexible energy demand, also buffering internally, for example, with DC grid storage and measures, as well as smart grid applications. But how far do you want to go? What is your individual ideal mix? It depends on your site, your location, your environment, expertise, the costs, the priorities, and your needs. And what we all need to keep in mind, every individual has the chance to do something. And even if it's just turning the light off, closing the window, and a better word, therefore, starts with yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for this inspiring talk. I invite the participants, if they have any questions, to write in the Q&A section of Zoom. Again, you can find the Q&A button down there. Currently, we have no questions. However, I have a question if we don't receive anyone. You mentioned at the beginning that there's a communication gap between different stakeholders. And you said this is mainly one of the barriers that we have right now. And I would like to know how we can overcome such a barrier. Is it just by raising awareness, such what we are trying to do today? What do we need to do? How we can start the conversation?
The basis of that is a fundamental misunderstanding. So for example, if I claim that I'm a good driver, that is my observation, but I'm not objective in judging that. So therefore, when we say, of course, I'm aware, we do not know whether that is actually the case, because we don't know what we don't know in that context. So how to get there, I often describe with something called the 5 steps. It's finding a common language, therefore communication gap, at which end we have both players on the same understanding, on the same level. So for example, governments still think that financial issues are the key problem. But as a matter of fact, 7 out of 10 companies finance their efficiency means through their own assets. And it's more the design of this, the subsidy programs. And it's more the smaller companies that are underneath, not the larger ones. But the larger ones obviously don't admit that, because they would cut off a much welcome financial assistance. But how to understand it, one could dive into a different section or different discipline, which is the field of nonviolent communication, where it's about the understanding of the needs. So if I understood what you care for and I integrate that into my mindset, I can understand, and you know that phrase, I know where you are coming from. Mm-hmm. And then knowing where you are coming from is the issue. And therefore, there's a UN working group starting very soon. The EUI call ends today, and that is exclusively focusing on how do I get the topic into the boardroom as an energy manager? How do I get a yes?
Okay.
How do I ensure that the policy level understands the actual needs?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're doing in the task force.
Okay. We have a question from the audience. What is the rationale for analyzing the energy efficiency of companies by company size, the micro, small, medium, and so on?
I'm not quite clear what the rationale in this question means. We understand that there are differences between sectors, of course, between intensity as well. But for example, in a small company, you do have between 9 and 49 employees. In a micro company, you have between 0 and 9 employees. They have completely different means. For example, if you go to a bakery, they have an oven, and what they care for is the quality and the output of bread. And they don't really want you to touch the oven because it's working. So they don't deal with the factor of energy to an extent that, for example, medium-sized companies would do, that are on the verge between supplying the local and regional market and being in the global competition where you have to optimize for costs all the time. Whereas the situation differs quite a lot between company sizes.
Okay. Thank you very much again, Stefan, for joining us today and for a very interesting presentation. I will move now to our second speaker, Mr. Christian Hein, who is the Director of Corporate Energy and Climate Affairs at Orobis AG. Orobis is the largest copper producer in Europe and the second largest in the world, and the largest copper recycler worldwide. Its headquarters is here in Hamburg, in Germany. Mr. Hein would share with us today a short overview of Orobis' sustainability strategy and to introduce an interesting project with us called Industrial Heat Project, which he leads. Mr. Hein, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot for the introduction and a warm welcome from me too. First of all, I would like to say a few words about Orobis. So maybe you could start the presentation with the first slide. You all should see the picture with Metals for Progress called. As mentioned, Orobis produces high purity copper from copper concentrates and recycling materials and processes it into intermediate products. Copper scrap and a variety of other recycling materials are reintroduced to the economic cycle this way, and that's what we call closing the loop. We produce more than 1 million tons of copper cathodes each year. They are processed in the group into continuous cast rod shapes, road products and profiles made of copper and copper alloys. In addition, we produce precious metals you can see on the picture, such as gold, silver, and a range of other products, for example, sulfuric acid and iron silicate as byproducts of the copper production. More than 6,800 employees in over 20 countries in Europe and in the USA are working at Orobis. So the next slide, please. Our metals will enable this so-called future trends. These are, for example, green energy. Roughly 8 tons of copper are used in windmills onshore, and 30 tons in offshore windmills, including the grid for sure. And other trends are e-mobility, digitalization, and urbanization. Next slide, please. Sustainability is a fundamental component of the Aurubis strategy. We are responsibly transforming raw materials, as mentioned in the slide before, into value to provide metals for the mentioned future trends. This is carried out considering the 3 pillars we are calling people, economy, and environment, all of them in balance. On the right-hand side, our main sustainability ratings and initiatives for Aurubis are pictured. So the next slide. Here you can see our sustainability strategy within the 3 pillars, people, economy, and environment, and there are 9 action fields. For example, the pillar environment, here in green, includes the action field energy and climate and environmental impact. For each of these action fields, we have established goals and defined measures. If you're interested in all these goals and measures, they are published on our homepage, and the link for this is named here on this slide. Next slide, please. I would like to highlight our action field energy and climate of the pillar environment. Our main goal is to further increase the energy efficiency within the Aurubis group and to save CO2 emissions. Therefore, we have developed key measures, for example, here listed, to build up an energy management system according to the ISO 50001 at all sites. Currently, half of them are certified, mainly in Germany. Second point is increasing flexibility in electricity. For example, implementing power-to-steam installations and produce steam if a surplus of renewable energy is produced and in the grid. The third thing is implementing further energy efficiency projects, such as the district heat supply of the Hafen City Hamburg with CO2 neutral industrial heat. I will say a few words later on. And last but not least, we are analyzing the requirements for new investments at our plants in relation to the German Climate Change Plan 2050. For example, the potential to use green hydrogen in our production processes. Next slide, please. Now I would like to introduce our project Industrial Heat, a climate alliance with our partner City and the city of Hamburg. You can see a picture here of the grid and the heat extraction, and you can see the area Hafen City that's colored red. As mentioned before, our target is to further improve our energy efficiency, but we are already reached the physical limit of our potentials within our plant borders. So therefore, we have looked outside the box to combine our goals to improve our energy efficiency with the targets of the city of Hamburg to become a smart and climate-friendly city. Our approach and the main project details we have summarized in a little movie, so I suggest to start the movie.
One second, please, to activate the sound.
Yeah.
Metals for Progress. The transition to renewable energies is underway at Aurubis, with an innovative project to supply heat to Hamburg's Hafen City district. Aurubis is one of the world's leading producers of copper and other metals. In its vast production facilities, a huge volume of industrial heat is generated that can be used for other purposes.
When Hafen City East was developed here in Hamburg as a completely new district, we saw an opportunity to transform this heat and use it in a meaningful way. We now supply the city with heat that even happens to be CO2-free.
The Aurubis plant on the Elbe River island Poite in Hamburg is the heart of the ambitious project, as well as its starting point. Here, more than 2,000 employees produce pure copper, precious metals and specialty products. Copper concentrates and recycling materials are heated and melted down in complex processes. The liquid metal is then cast into molds. Once the plates have cooled, the process of electrolytic copper refining begins, resulting in copper with 99.99% purity. In a related sub-process, the sulfur contained in the copper concentrates is converted into sulfuric acid. This chemical reaction releases heat that can be adapted for use in Hafen City East. 160 million kilowatt-hours of heat that could supply 8,000 four-person households, a reduction of 20,000 tons of CO2 and 12 million cubic meters of water annually. And there's potential for more.
We still have 2/3 that could be converted, however. Overall, we could provide the city with an additional 500 million kilowatt-hours of heat, not just to Hafen City East, but to the entire city, which would lead to a reduction of roughly 140,000 tons of CO2.
This requires a massive amount of renovation work on the Aurubis premises. The core of the project and of the future heat supply for Hafen City is a new intermediate absorber that has been integrated into the facilities after 3.5 years of precise planning.
We needed special types of steel for this intermediate absorber, which is our source of heat. We had to have up to 50,000 acid-resistant bricks laid as well. That was a big part of the construction. And then, of course, we had to lay a number of pipelines.
From here, the heat continues its journey across the river toward Hafen City. In close cooperation with Aurubis, Enercity AG further transports the water, which has been heated to 90 degrees Celsius. A 3.7-kilometer-long district heating pipeline starts at the plant premises, travels under the streets of Hamburg and crosses the Market Canal and the Poite Canal. Crossing the Elbe River itself is a unique challenge. Existing suspensions on the Norde-Elbe Bridge were used to draw in and install the pipelines.
Aurubis hat mit diesem Projekt gut unter Beweis gestellt.
With this project, Aurubis has proven that the copper industry isn't part of the problem when it comes to the energy shift, but a substantial part of the solution.
Teil der Lösung.
Okay, that's it. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you very much, Christian, for this. I open the floor to questions from the audience, but I would like to ask first one question from my side regarding the collaboration with the city itself. How hard was it actually to build this with the city? Did you find any barriers?
Yeah, we had a lot of barriers, for sure. Some technical barriers. They are mentioned in the movie to modify the process, and for sure we had for a very long time, more than 3 years, talks to the city of Hamburg and also to the partner Enercity, it was very hard to come to a conclusion how we could build up this project. But at the end, we were very successful and very happy. One of the main barriers was also the funding. So we needed more than 30% of funding to realize this project, because normally you have payback times of 2 to 3 years in the industry, and therefore you need much of funding to realize it, and not only at the industry, also for our partner Enercity, who built up the pipeline outside the fence, and who also built up the energy control center to safeguard our heat.
Okay. I have a question from the audience. Since the cities that have more population or industry and return or payback can be higher, how do you see this application that you have in smaller cities or municipalities, something like under 10,000 inhabitants?
Yeah. I think it's also possible to realize such a project in smaller cities. I think the main challenge is that you need for sure a grid, and it depends about the length of the grid. Is it too far from the industry? It doesn't make sense to realize it, because it's a very high investment. And then you need a partner who's safeguarding the heat, and who also could produce heat via a control center and via let's call a storage center or something like that, to produce heat if Aurubis or the industry could not produce the heat.
Have you compared the cost of Aurubis solution in this project for the district heating with the costs from other sources, such as natural gas or waste, incineration, etc., etc.?
Yeah. Our partner Enercity for sure compared other technologies and the investment to have a look what's the best way. That's for sure you have to do. The main focus and the main advantage of our project was that it is CO2 neutral.
Okay. And such pipeline that you have in this project, is it defined also in the city development plan, like the roads, telecommunication, and other structure?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
Is it included in the city development plan now?
Yeah, that's right. It's included. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for this presentation.
You're welcome.
And now we will move to our next speaker, Mr. Pedro Rosero, the board member at TIC Portugal, the Portuguese ICT cluster. Mr. Pedro's background is in computer science, information systems, and he has a diverse professional experience working in public, private, and non-for-profit sectors. For more than 20 years, he worked as a consultant to some municipalities in Portugal, and he led digital transformation and strategic development processes. He has been holding C-level positions in tech and investment companies since 2000, both in technology and in management. From 2013, he is working at TIC PT, mainly in cooperation projects in areas like smart cities, active and healthy aging, and digital transformation. He also works as an expert in some EU-funded programs. Today, Mr. Pedro would discuss cities' role in digital and green transformation. Pedro, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, I have to thank the organization for having invited me, and also Stefan and Christian for making it easier to make the bridge between industry and cities. First of all, I think it's important to know why we talk a lot about smart cities and cities in sustainability. It's just because we now, according to the UN, the population of the percentage of the population of the world that's living in urban areas is about 55%. And the estimation for 2050, 30 years, would be 68%. I don't know if this will happen or not, but this outbreak of the coronavirus of COVID-19 may change a little this and make it more balanced. But nevertheless, nowadays, European cities provide 85% of the Europe GDP, and cities have a high density of interactions among the citizens, of course, and this leads to new opportunities for using digital technology in education, in creativity, in creating new services, and also, of course, increasing productivity, efficiency, well-being, and why not doing this in a greener way. That's probably the most important thing is during the last years, Europe has focused a lot on digital transformation, but we are now facing in this post-COVID-19 era, and we should also use the opportunity of the Green Deal to do this transition through collaboration, not only to provide a digitally enabled future that is inspiring, but also to make it more sustainable and more resilient. This way we are tackling at least 3 important sustainable development goals, both linked with industry, innovation, and infrastructure, the sustainable cities and communities, but we are at least putting in place what is one of the key sustainable development goals, it's the 17th, is creating partnerships. So what can cities and regions do to accelerate this digital and green transformation? Having every change process, leadership and collaboration is quite important. And this is not done only looking at the municipality, looking at the mayor or the politicians. It has to be considering a large local ecosystem where many different actors are present from many different sectors. Another pillar is we need skills, adequate skills, digital skills, and not only digital skills, but we also need to have a culture of entrepreneurship, not only to accelerate the digital transformation process, but also to deal with, for instance, circular economy, a new approach to our consumption, but also a new approach that is industry must follow. We need data, and we need to adapt technologies to our local challenges, to our local context. And of course, we need investment and infrastructures. So cities can be, this is a PricewaterhouseCoopers diagram based on digital, cities can be digital launchpads, but as we can see, most of it can also include this area of getting greener. We need technology, we need data, we need support structures, incubators, fab labs, and so on. We need governance and leadership. We need collaboration and communication. We need talent and entrepreneurs, but also we need to have access to new level infrastructures and to money. Unfortunately, we need money, and we need new money, or we can go on savings like Stefan and Christian were saying. Starting from leadership and cooperation. First of all, everything must start with defining a long-term vision and a long-term digital and green strategy. Sometimes this kind of documents is nice to read, nicely presented, but it doesn't go more than that. It's just a paper. We need to go a little deep on that, and we need to monitor its execution, collect the data, and also we need to benchmark with other cities. We have to know if we are doing what we can do as the best or not, because cities are also competing for some resources with each other, starting from the industrial players, and also for people. We have a very intense demographic problem in Europe, and every city wants to attract the newest generation, the talents, because that especially with high skills, because that will bring growth, money, welfare, and well-being. And for this, we also have to start looking to standards. Some of them will help not defining the strategy by itself, but defining how we can monitor the strategy and how we can implement some of the tools. Again, we have to build something that is quite hard to achieve, especially in areas like Portugal, but similarly in other areas. We have to build long-lasting partnerships and trust relationships. We have to include all in this definition of the strategy, and we have to include all in defining the vision, starting from the citizens, but also, of course, integrating some ambassadors in the process. And we have to breach some barriers. We have to cross boundaries. We have to make different industries collaborate among themselves. We have to have the public and the private sectors aligned. We have to have the quadruple helix involved: the society, the R&D, the government, and of course, companies. This is what is nowadays called cross-fertilization. Just to have a look on standards, and I think this is important to understand how they can help us on defining the strategy. ISO 37120 has been revised in 2018 as a standard that can be shared by a lot of cities in the world, starting from large cities like London, for instance, or Barcelona, and has a certification process that is based in a set of core and support indicators. But also they have introduced another two dimensions. What is a smart city? So a set of indicators that can help us defining if we are being smarter or not, but also indicators for being resilient. For instance, if we have an economy quite dependent on a specific sector, probably if something happens to that sector, we have an employment problem. Or just to give an example. But these standards are coping with at least 9 SDGs. So health, education, gender equality, water, decent work and economic growth, inequalities, the sustainable cities, climate actions, and inclusiveness, peace, justice, and striving institutions. On the other side, we have work that has started within the scope of the EIPM Smart Cities and Communities, and 3 different standards were produced. They are reference standards. Currently, they have been adopted by DEAN, but similar ones are being worked with BSI. I think some of them are already out, and and at the European level. One is a reference platform for reference architecture model for an open urban platform where we collect all the data from all the sources. Has to be flexible. And we have also 2 other infrastructure related standards. One is I think a very important piece in the future city infrastructures, the multifunctional lamppost with a lot of services that can bring a lot of services to the city, and one other that is related with urban mobility data collection. Just to give you an example, what cities have to bring to create this vision, this shared vision, but also to lead the process of implementing, they need ambassadors. Again, this is for digital transformation, but the picture, but it happens exactly the same in this new area. We're dealing with the Green Deal, and we are with sustainability. We have to have the politicians, the regional councils, the cities. We have to have the CEOs of some small and medium companies, especially startups. We have to have cluster managers, someone like ourselves in TIS, that we have a network of people, of institutions, and we create events to get together and exchange best practice and ideas among them. We have to have culture, media, researchers, citizens, entrepreneurs, social partners, investors, and also the staff from the city managers, and all, of course, we have to have all companies involved. Another pillar is skills and entrepreneurship. We have, first of all, to look at our own population and transform it in local talents. We have to rethink how we educate them, we are preparing them. For instance, now with the COVID-19, we have to use a lot of remote education technologies, but probably we haven't been using it in the best way. How are we thinking on preparing our kids, our young people, to be more entrepreneur and to be more autonomous using digital technologies? Are we driving collaboration with in these learning processes? We also have to join with the industry, and not only with the industry, with other entities in the ecosystems, like, for instance, employment and training agencies, to train these new workers or retrain the ones we have in other domains that need reskilling. We have to be attractive to talents, and this has a lot of, is quite linked with territorial marketing. We have to create the brands, we have to develop a process with the companies and with the clusters and so on to retain the talents. It doesn't matter if we have a very interesting territory and we don't have employment, for instance, or if companies are not hosting and welcoming their workers or creating the best service for them to access. For instance, if we have an industrial park, probably it's important to have some services in the neighborhood, to have children near to the parents, to have a good mobility plan, and so on. But we have to start first developing our regional skills assessment. We have to look at us and see what's missing and actively looking for new talents. I will give some examples after, but I think we have to be, cities have to be as proactive as companies are in looking for talent, because they also depend on new people, on new knowledge to grow. And we have to invest in developing an entrepreneurial culture. This means that, for instance, since kindergarten to university, we have to empower students and help them through, for instance, problem-solving activities and collaboration challenges, taking the lead. I would give a classical example that in the US, it's quite common, the kids in the school to do lemonade and sell it for 1 or 2 activities at the end of the year. Of course, this is not a business, a real one, but it shows the importance of money and creating value and how to sell products. This kind of culture is important not only to create companies, but also to have a different attitude towards change within the existing companies. Also, of course, local administration and public administration have to empower some of their employees to do these changes. Sometimes public administrations are quite conservative in engaging change, but they have to lead on this. And we also have to use the media and the press to spread this kind of culture. Good examples, best practice, what we are achieving, how are we benchmarking with other cities. This is important for this kind of transparency and communication. It's important to reinforce what the city is doing and how it's linking with its citizens and with its companies. Just some examples and how this can be possible. This is a very small city in the interior side of Portugal, Fundão, around 30,000 inhabitants, that developed an innovation plan in 2012 when they were facing, of course, problems with demographics and with the crisis. The industry is not that present in this area, except for agriculture and agro-food sectors. But they devised a plan where, for instance, they have created a software quality center that uses the population that's living there to perform usability tests. So, and they are providing integrated services for many software companies on that. They had created a Fab Lab and a co-working space, and they are selling the city abroad. But probably one of the most interesting things they are doing is they bought a lot of inhabited houses in the city center. They have refurbished it, and the city is renting them to these new professions that want to live there, and creating a lot of different new high quality social services like education and kindergartens for these new employees. So they are betting that living in Fundão can be pleasant, they can live well, much better than in cities, but they also can have a stimulating work based on knowledge and work in multinational companies like Altran and do their business over there. And if something we have learned with COVID-19 is that the world can still be working in this remote perspective if we have connectivity, if we have access, and if we have processes to control remote work, we can be wherever we want, even in the garden, sitting, taking a suntan and working. So this is something that was devised in 2012, and they, for instance, they have been proactive in finding people that was not existing in Portugal at that time in Eastern countries and reskilling them partially in cooperation with universities in Eastern countries, and then they gave them a cultural background when they were in Portugal. There was this kind of marketing to sell the city and also this kind of training programs. Nowadays, for instance, they are still training through using boot camps and the Portuguese startup called Academia de Código, a lot of unemployed people to go and code. Code for what companies? For Altran, for Primavera, for major software houses and IT consultancy firms that are installed in Fundão, a city that a couple of years ago was not known at all except for food, cherries, and some other very good stuff. They don't even have a university there. They have a neighbor municipality in Covilhã, but as the interior was not attractive to young population, most of the population that was living there and studying there was moving towards centers like Lisbon, Porto, and recently towards countries, other countries in Europe. So they have tried to not only create a new brand of innovation in an interior of a small village, but also to create conditions and mark those conditions to retain and attract new talent. Another example, and this is not really a city initiative, but is an initiative of a foundation, Mondragon, in the Basque Country. They have a university and they have a very interesting program in leadership. And what they are using is they are using what they call the Finnish method. They are using team-based learning. So this course doesn't have classes, traditional classes. They are mentors, and they have a very interesting singularity. They start in the first year creating a real project in a real company. It's not really a company; it's a cooperative at the initial stage, but they have to go from year one to the end of year 4, creating revenues or profits to support their own study activities, including large stays in Silicon Valley, in Finland, in India, and so on. So they need to generate a lot of new money, and they are learning by doing. So they are learning to manage a company by managing a company. And sometimes they have, of course, they have a very good strategy. If it works, they can keep with the strategy. If it doesn't work, they have to find alternatives to make it sustainable. Another example, and I think this is also very interesting, is from Sweden. In around 2011, 2012, the world was in crisis. Of course, everybody knows that. And there was a city called Eskilstuna, where it's based, Volvo Automotive is based, and other companies like ABB and Saab and Scania. and they were the city with around 120,000 inhabitants, and they were facing a real challenge. About 10% of the population was in risk of getting unemployed. So what they have done, what the city have done was, okay, let's talk with the local university, let's talk with the companies and find a way of avoiding this unemployment. And they have created an industry-driven training program with these partners, with funding from the Swedish government, of course, but also from those companies. And all the courses were at least supported, all the teams were at least based on 5 companies' needs and real support. So this is very industrial driven, and this allows them. And by the way, this course was fully in English, free for charge for all European Union students, and it gives credit in master programs in that university. So what happened from 2012 in the when we were living a crisis, and they were in automotive industry and also ABB and so on, were not having demand. They have used these fundings to train those people, and now they have again looking for new people. They don't have enough people to work on this sector, and so they have created more than 12,000 employments from 2012 till today. So it's quite remarkable how industry collaboration, the academy and the city could help in collaboration to solve a huge potential problem. So no one lost its income, and it was able to find a new career opportunity, having new skills, not only digital skills, but also industrial related skills. And that's new industrial related skills. We of course have to access data, and big data is the word, and we have to adapt technologies. Okay, it's still there. Digital city strategy, it's a mistake. It's not only digital, but we have to rely on open innovation. We have to open the discussion of what the city needs to be to the ecosystem, to all those startups, to all those different people, to all those visionaries that can help us on solving our problems in innovative ways. And this is something that we can do even in Europe, even respecting public procurement laws. We can, of course, use PPI and PCP programs that are sometimes misused by public authorities. E-government, of course, and we can look at Estonia, for instance, is a driver of innovation. The public administration must also show some leadership in the process, but also has to cooperate with all levels of government in the country. We cannot do it alone in the municipality of Aveiro, for instance. We have to be working with the regional authority and also with the central government in some areas. There are shared domains like identity, for instance, or addresses, or taxes, or contributions to the social system that we can also link, and we have to govern these changes and the design of information systems in a cooperative way. We have to be based ever more in open data. It's more than known that in open data is very good support for innovation and growth, and that data is considered the new oil. You can look at the growth of the major companies in the world, and there was a change from industry automotive in the late 90s, for instance, and now the biggest companies in the world are technology. So data is the new oil, and we have to open it to create new business and to also to create trust. Why? Because open data platforms promote transparency and also accountability, and that trust engages citizens in the process. Again, this change, this transformation, not only to digital, but also to resilience and to resilient cities and sustainability, must be done by all. This data can help creating new businesses, as I said. For instance, the sharing economy ones, but also finding new revenues for the city that actually or currently doesn't have any value from that data they own by themselves. But if they sell it or if they make it available to other companies that can make profits from that in combination with other data sets, they can also not only ensure the transparency point to point, so how the data is being used and aggregated to generate new value for those companies, but also to capture some of that value. And that's something that can be done and has to be done using interoperability and making data sets usable, not only inside the organization, but outside the organization, but also inside these organizations. And when we are talking about municipalities, it's quite common to have silos among departments. So we have open data interoperability will contribute to break these silos and also help the different departments of the municipality to collaborate. It's sometimes awkward, but for instance, economic development department in a municipality sometimes doesn't have access to planning information. For instance, where is there some urban pressure in the city? And this is important, for instance, to devise a strategy to develop new infrastructures. We have to ensure also access to technologies. And it's not only a question of availability. We can put a fiber optic cable from a point to other, but if we don't have digital literacy in all the citizens, it won't be used. If we don't create new services and engage local businesses, interest is not there. So no one will use that infrastructure. And of course, this will be converted in new services and new value. So this holistic perspective of access is not so common, but in Europe, there are some programs like Smart Villages that is managed by the GRC that is looking at these different perspectives, not only availability, but also the availability of services, the literacies, and the intention to use. It's quite important to tackle all these. So what are the other vector is infrastructures and investments? First of all, we have to have, as Christian was saying in the area, some critical infrastructures. We are talking about digital infrastructures, of course, fiber connections, secure connections, and 5G, for instance. But 5G by itself is also an opportunity to find for cities, new streams of revenue. And how they can develop or they can operate their infrastructures, or they can build it at least or plan it as an integrated infrastructure that can be used by many utilities and many telcos. It doesn't make sense, especially when we're looking for high bandwidth and low latency in 5G, that it will rely on a very dense network of antennas that every operator that wants to have coverage in that city uses its own infrastructure. So there's room for neutral hosting and integrated infrastructures. And that can happen, for instance, with something that I mentioned before, that is the use of lamp poles. Lamp poles are spread across the territory and they can be hosting a lot of new services. They can contribute to energy savings, for instance, having intelligent lighting systems. They can contribute to monitor the environment. They can contribute to monitor people's behaviors. If we have a video camera over there, they can provide access to not only 5G access, but Wi-Fi connections to people. They can be used in emergency and they can be used to communicate. So infrastructures, digital infrastructures are important, but also it's important to think as in Hamburg, Christian was saying, in a wider area. So for instance, heat and cold networks are important. In Portugal, for instance, it's not common due to our weather, but it's important that we realize that if we join forces with others, we can have a centralized or in a wider district level, at least, centrals that will generate heat and cold, and that will reduce emissions in AC, in offices and houses. We have to have sensors, and we have to ensure that one of the also very critical infrastructures is mobility. And I have to say that during this COVID-19 outbreak, I think I'm perfectly convinced that remote work will endure after this outbreak. Not all days, not for everything, not for everyone, but will create an opportunity that will move people from city centers or from industrial areas to closer to their homes locations, co-working spaces, for instance, or smaller offices, and avoiding a lot of people moving towards the city center and backwards just to be working in a computer. So some of these people will be able to work some days, and I would say some days because there is an integration with the organization culture and the social interaction that we also need, and has to be preserved and has to be fostered, that we still need to have. But in many days, we can be able to work from home. And this will change mobility needs. Probably will be thinking on, instead of large public transportation systems, probably will be thinking more on cycling and also on-demand transport, on sharing economy, and also, why not, in thinking in accelerating autonomous vehicles. Logistics will also change. And there's another thing that can happen in this post-COVID area, is that we could realize that the economy has been working and we have access to goods and services through e-commerce and through marketplaces. So an e-commerce portal, for instance, in a city or in a region, can help the smaller companies, even the producers, to sell their products in shorter value chains in the neighborhood. So reducing the need for transport, reducing the need, the emission level, and also creating more value for each individual, because they will potentially save money and have better products. So cities and regions should think on using this. And there are some initiatives on place right now. There was a joint portal that is a joint venture between the postal services and the large retailer in Portugal, created the first online trade fair of cheese, for instance. It was a very interesting experience, and regions like Leiria are creating an e-marketplace and e-commerce portal for this. Just they have realized that people, if they start using e-commerce, probably they will continue using it. We also have to secure investments in large infrastructure, and we're talking about energy, of course. We're talking about waste management, and that model that Christian and Stefan are saying about CO2 emissions or producing heat and so on is ever more important, because it can save a lot of money and can make those investments very sustainable. Smart mobility and new operators like shared mobility ones can also help doing some investments in these areas. It doesn't need to be always public investment. We just have to find the right partners. And we have to start in small scales. We have to start probably in district areas and then growing. And one of the funny questions someone from the audience said was about small cities. There's within the EIP on smart cities and communities, in a program that joins a lot of stakeholders from the European Union, there is a special action cluster called Small Giants. And it's precisely how smaller cities can join together, share a vision, share an investment plan, and take the benefit of doing procurement or development process together. Of course, there's a trade-off and there's a technical feasibility, like Christian was saying, but in some cases, it's possible to coordinate the needs and the investments within a group of smaller cities. For instance, in a region like Aveiro or Coimbra, it doesn't make sense not to think the mobility system in an aggregated way, because people are coming from outside the city towards the city center. And this crosses a lot of municipalities. It's only one topic, but also energy production and waste management and water treatment is something that we are traditionally is being done by a group of municipalities. And if they are small, if they gather themselves in a joint strategy, they can do it together. But also we have to leverage on companies' expertise. We're talking about expertise from energy companies in savings, from industrial companies, like we're saying, and also from telcos. We have a lot of different backgrounds in these companies that if we join, we can create and secure investments in infrastructures. For instance, the idea of all operators share the same physical network in 5G is clearly a good opportunity for the cities if they want to invest in a neutral hosting approach, or in a joint dark fiber, for instance, operator that will rent the infrastructure to the other operators, sharing the same infrastructure instead of creating one and another. So this is linked with all the sustainability of this from the economic perspective. So we have to find who are the key stakeholders, what new business models could be designed and developed, and how we can extract money from saving, from having a better utility management, and using, of course, deploying new infrastructure aligned with the development plans of the city. Not before, not after, but aligned with the vision of development that sometimes is not shared.
Just sorry, Pedro, regarding the time, because we have also another speaker. So if you can, 1 minute, yes.
It's 1 minute. Just to say that the first attempt, or the first large attempt in Portugal to have key infrastructures in a different perspective was when we were building the World Expo in '98. So what you see is technical galleries where we have joint infrastructures of water, heat and coal, waste collection, electricity and telcos, and it was 30 years ago. So we can do this when we are developing new areas. And I'm showing also this last one is an example of a foundry that was installed, an Indian company installed here in Agda, where this factory consumes a comparable amount of energy to the rest of the whole municipality, required a lot of new skills from the workers, and it was quite important, the cooperation between the city and the company and the employment agency to have the infrastructure deployed, the electricity and telecommunication, but also to have the other infrastructure there that was knowledgeable workers. It's important. Sometimes it's important to have this cooperation between cities and companies to help development. And that's it. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Pedro, for this in-depth discussion. I will move now, because of the time constraint, to our fourth speaker. And if you have any questions to Pedro, please put them in the question and answer section, and we will ask him about it at the end of this session. So our next speaker is Ms. Kaiko Duguchi, project coordinator of MSEC project on the Japanese side. She has been involved in EU and Japan collaboration research projects since 2014 as a project coordinator. And MSEC is the third project of those. She's also a management director for an SME called Porthofna Incorporation in Japan. And she's the project manager of IT-related projects such as Furusato, which is hometown in Japanese, telework project funded by MIC. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Ms. Kaiko will introduce the MSEC project, which is an international collaboration research project between Europe and Japan, which stands for multi-layered security technologies to ensure hyper-connected smart cities with blockchain, big data, cloud, and IoT. Ms. Kaiko, the floor is yours.
thank you for the introduction. Actually, my name is it's pronounced Keiko. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Seems
we
like...
can. Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay, so I don't know. This is. Can I share my screen instead? Maybe not.
Eiko, just let me know and I will advance the slides.
Okay. All right. Okay, so again, I'm Keiko Doguchi from NTT East in Japan. First of all, I appreciate to have this opportunity to introduce our project MSEC today. So MSEC is an international collaboration project between Europe and Japan. MSEC stands for multi-layered security technologies to ensure hyper-connected smart city with blockchain, big data, cloud, and IoT. So it's pretty long, so we call it MSEC. It's funded by European Commission and NICT in Japan. It's a 3-year project since July 2018. Next, please. No, actually, go back. Yeah, thanks. It is an international project. We have these members from Spain, France, Greece, Iran on EU side, and the members from Japanese side. We, NTT East, is a project coordinator on JP side, and Worldline, it's in Spain, is the project coordinator on EU side. So our members are organized from like private companies, universities, private research organizations, and research national research organizations. Next, please. So the main goal of this project is to research, develop, deploy, and demonstrate multi-layered security technologies to ensure smart cities. We use many technologies in our everyday life, like devices such as smartphones and PC, cloud, IoT, big data, and so on. You can really not see visually, but there are many layers for those technologies. So I will talk about like risks as like many incidents happening and getting more and more in this category. So you will see how serious we need to confront and deal with it. Next, please. So there are several ways to divide the layers for IT related things, tools, and technologies. So this is one example of layer structure for the IoT related things. And then also like specific bridges in each layer. First, like application level, we have code injection, buffer overflow, unauthorized permission, and manipulation of sensitive data. So data abstraction, like replay attacks, account list attacks, and then data accumulation, attacks to provide private data confidentiality and integrity. For connectivity, hacking dots, main middle interception. And physical devices, we have node failure or severe attacks. So those are the problem overviews in these layers. Next, please. So this is some data about IoT security breaches. According to the IoT analysis press research, This data is from 2015 to 2017. The number one is malware, which is 24% of those breaches. And then the second is man in the middle, it's 22%, and brute force is 18%, and then denial of service is 15%. Which those well known for breaches, like total is already 80%. So, so this is the breaches we are facing. We're having the programs that it's going on. Next slide, please. So I will show that how much impact we are getting from those breaches. This is a number of the total damage caused by reported cyber crimes in the United States. So the number refers to internet crimes reported to the Governmental Internet Crime Compliance Center in the United States. Oh, this is, even though this is the information about the United States, but I thought that it would be like useful reference, how much impact we are getting. And you see how much went up rapidly. If you see from 2017 to 2019, so now it's like 3.5 billion US dollars, and it is up from 1 billion US dollars in from 2015. So as it says, this is reported cybercrime, but if you can include non-reported incidents, it will be a lot more, I guess. Next slide, please. This is the drivers for security enhancement. So first, it's increased use of IoT. Research organization called IDC, it's a famous company, estimates that there will be 41.6 billion connected IoT devices or things, generating at 79.5 zettabyte of data in 2025. As the number of connected IoT devices grows, the amount of data get generated by these devices well. The second one is high number of ransomware attacks. The rise in adoption of IoT has increased the potential cyber attacks go up more. And cyber like criminals look for smart devices with poor security practices. And it is estimated that over 30 million IoT attacks were done in 2018, an increase of 200% compared to recorded in 2017. And new regulations and policies, governments all over the world is trying to setting up the regulations regarding the data security and privacy. So various regulations have been introduced to protect the security IoT devices and various data, such as GDPR in Europe and PIPA in Japan. So those are going on, and the technologies advancements. New emerging technologies such as blockchain, AI, machine learning, and so on will facilitate the development of the new solutions focused on protecting end-to-end IoT applications. So next, please. So as you recognize, smart city industry is the one of the fastest growing segment for IoT security because of the trends that I just talked about in the previous slides. So here's more data about IoT security market growth. This is the forecast in 2017. IoT security spending was $703 million for 2017. And because of the fast growing market, it is forecast to become almost $4.4 billion opportunity by 2022. The IoT security market is an aggregation of innovative setups and established firms such as global chip manufacturers, infrastructure providers, as well as cloud enterprise software companies. The top 10 providers account for over 40% of the IoT security market. Next slide, please. So, and many medias are talking about, like Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, Forbes, they are talking about the topics related to security issues in smart city. Next, please. So with those trends, here are the expected results of our MSEC project we are aiming for. The MSEC project will deliver a set of concrete and added value main results. These are like 4 things. Results 1, MSEC distributed robust and trusted smart city platform based on IoT, cloud, big data, and blockchain technologies that empowers IoT stakeholders to develop, deploy, and operate novel multi-purpose IoT applications for smart cities. The specific infrastructure will be piloted in real smart city in Santander in Spain and Fujisawa in Japan. So result 2, MSEC IoT marketplace. It is an open IoT marketplace or market applications, data and service. The first one is provide framework upon which objects and people can exchange value in form of virtual currencies, such as data and services. Number 2, defines the motivation incentive according to social and business context for humans and smart objectives and objects to interact. The specific marketplace will be piloted through cross-border trials in Santander and Fujisawa. So we are validating those interoperability, efficiency, and data protection principles. And in the core, this is a core of the MSEC project. Result 3, MSEC Smart City Ecosystem. It is a sustainable ecosystem of stakeholders, tools and infrastructures upon which new entities and the other players like developer communities and students, entrepreneurs, they can build and utilize this our result to for the hyper-connected smart city applications. And last one, result 4, it's a like revenue model, like replication plan. It is a business model on how to like replicate or adapt the MSEC approach further and their smart city, and then they can utilize our results for the to return of the investment and the benefits. Next, please. this is what MSEC is offering. So these are the what we are trying to offer from the project results. Value proposition is core of the competitive advantages. It clearly describes why someone would want to use or utilize or our results instead of competitor platform. So next, please. So there are our pilot cities. The left one is Fujisawa City in Japan, and the right one is Santander in Spain. So both cities are famous for very beautiful beaches, and then many visitors are coming from sightseeing. So we are trying to implement our research in those cities. Yeah, and thanks to the cooperation from the city officers of those cities, we are expecting a great result. Next, please. All right, this is all for my presentation. If you like to have more information, please visit our website, msecproject.eu. So we have all the information and update all our results in this website. Next, please. And also we have a LinkedIn account and a Twitter account. We're posting our updates like periodically, so please check it out. Next, please. Thank you very much. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you very much for your presentation as well. For the time's sake, we would like to start with our panel discussion. So please, to the audience, if you have any questions to our panelists, please write them in the Q&A section. Let's see if we have any questions. So until we have some questions, something that already Pedro mentioned in his presentation. In this moment, the world's biggest challenge is also one of the highest natural and social risks, this COVID-19 pandemic. And I would like to pose a question to our panelists to discuss the influence on sustainable manufacturing and sustainable cities, and how will the changes that are happening now already in many cities and by many companies will influence the sustainability discussion. Will we have a new normal in the near future that will affect sustainability in different sectors? We'll start with Stefan.
Thank you. And also thank you for all the other presentations. Impact of COVID-19. We will certainly, at least for the foreseeable future, have a new normal. And that extends from rethinking whether relying on one manufacturing site and risking cut of supply chains is still the way to go, or whether economic optimization ranks second after supply security. In terms of sustainability, there are calls from various different angles. Some say we need to slow down our sustainability efforts because Corona first. Others, however, say Corona as an exemplar on what we face with climate change, only hitting the fast forward button, and we need to act with a similar ambition on climate change prevention or on sustainability than we did on Corona. And I'm glad to say that the data collection that I referred to earlier does actually ask manufacturing companies what impact it has on them. So more efficiency, less efficiency, a postponement, or even doing things earlier. What we have seen in the media, though, is that at least investors demand that any building up activity, post-corona activities or subsidies should emphasize the factor of sustainability particularly. It's like the German economic minister's statement, we need a fitness program for the economy. And if you go for a fitness program, you do first a fitness assessment. So how is your duration, your long-term energy, which is the business viability in principle, but how do you develop new strengths? Yeah, so muscle training. And for every person going through such an assessment, there's an individual training plan, finding a compromise between both factors. And that's what we need in consideration of Corona.
Thank you very much. Pedro?
Of course, I agree with Stefan was saying about manufacturing and the question of the value chain, but getting more on what happened in reaction of the coronavirus, we could see that CO2 emissions dropped a lot, of course, but also we could see that some of our workers were able to continue working from home. And of course, we could look at that from that perspective, and we could also look from the cities that were empty, without traffic, without people. Another factor that changed a lot was education. We were mostly dealing with education in presence, but all of our students from elementary school to university were able to continue studying using remote technologies. So these have, of course, advantages in terms of what are the emissions. We don't need to move, we don't pollute, we don't produce waste. It's in the same way, and we can keep working. Of course, this also has the other part. We need to have contact with others. We need to have a social interaction. Staying at home can bring additional problems like how to compatibilize our professional life, our personal life, our family life, and so on. So I think what will happen, and not only because of this first stage of the COVID crisis, but because it will endure for many months till we get herd immunity through a vaccine, is that we are going to have an hybrid model more and more. So we are staying at home some days, or and if that happens from home and we need social interaction, probably companies will rely on smaller offices apart from the city centers, near where people live, and that can help people going to low density areas where the quality of life is eminently better than now. Of course, this will change a lot on the fabric of the city centers. It will change a lot on the mobility domain, what kind of services, what kind of needs, and also will have impact in the locations of the offices and the companies. That will change a lot. And if we are able to cope this, keep on growing or keep on maintaining a reasonable economic activity like we were more or less able to do during this outbreak, and having the human interaction that we need to have, and some of the work, of course, cannot be remote at this moment. In parallel, we train people for new skills, for more automation that still needs control and development that can be remote. We can have a very good balance, not compromising the economy, and going more deeper on the sustainability and on the resilience part. What we could understand is that in the actual stage of our economic of our countries, we are not so resilient as we thought. We are dependent on other countries, for instance, for basic things. And that change will definitely create a lot of impact. I can say that we started just in time with Toyota a couple of years ago, and no one, with the crisis in 2011-12, no one was having stocks in nearby. So when we ordered the car, probably the first order of piece or steel was delivered to the first manufacturer on that time with the first entrance for money, and Tesla is a very good example on that. So a lot of things will dramatically change if we invert this tendency to have people apart from the companies and stocks closer to the companies.
Actually, what you are mentioning and what Stefan already mentioned, what we are seeing already is also from the workforce, from the population, we are seeing also a kind of change in trends. So people now more or less are forced to use digital tools. And this is something is forcing them to have those digital skills and become basically skilled in using those digital tools. Or for instance, here in Germany, we are seeing a trend of switching from paying by cash to paying by card, which for a long time we've seen a lot of resistance, let's put it this way, from the German population in using those new technologies. So all these changes are also bringing, from my point of view, new opportunities. And how we can seize those opportunities and then make the most of them is what we need to discuss next.
Yeah, you're right, but also just one topic, when we're forced to use digital technologies in a very short period of time, we have raised a lot of problems with cybersecurity, and so again, it's another opportunity to tackle for training, for taking a look with on digital literacy with more care than we've done before. But, for instance, even in people with advanced digital skills like myself, probably I started buying clothes online during the crisis. Just like that. I was not fond of that, and I decided to do it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Mr. Hein has left due to other commitments. So Kaiko or Vanessa, would you like also to give us your thought about this? Unfortunately, we don't have any other questions from the audience.
Yes, hello, it's Vanessa from Worldline. As Keiko said, Worldline is the European coordinator from MSEC. In terms of COVID and the impact on, for example, in the view of our project, from my point of view, what I think is that until now, investments on IoT and security were on track, but not as much as maybe we could have from now on, since with this situation, it has been shown that the society and the cities need solutions to mitigate and to overcome this kind of current problems that we are facing in terms of IoT. The role it's very important, for example, for monitoring people, and for example now with the back to the new normality, and some countries there will be some restrictions. For example, in Spain we have different phases, I think over 4 phases, and in each phase, in each stage, we can do some things, but not as totally we were doing before the COVID. So, for example, now that we will be able to go out again to the streets and so on, we'll be able to take, for example, public transportation, and this could make kind of agglomerations on public transportations, and with IoT and technologies like big data and predictive analysis, we could, for example, avoid this kind of agglomerations in determinate points, and protect people, keeping the a safe distance between them until there is, for example, a vaccination, and we don't have this kind of problem anymore. So for that, I think MSEC it makes a really important role on this by providing this kind of security for IoT solutions, and I think we will have a really big impact and commercialization after the project finalized.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a question related to the security issue from the audience, and it's basically about one of the biggest challenges to use big data and to have smart city is in who has the right to use the collect data, and can it be misused for illegal activities? So basically the conflict between the overall presence of technology and big data is the collecting vast amount of personal information creates a place for misuse of this private data. And what you have mentioned already is very important to know that this security is crucial for us.
So for the sake of time, can I jump in here and
yes.
say that in the 27th, one of the talks by Matthew Gallisot will be precisely on this. So I would invite Samir and all the others to join us on the next panel on the 27th, and we have at least some clues how to address this.
Okay, so thank you very much to our speakers. It was very interesting discussion that we have today, and we would like also to thank all the attendees today. We have now what we call a progress session where we have 2 minutes for each one of the participants presenting in the progress session. So can you please start, Mr. Goran?
Sorry, Stefan. Sorry, Ahmad. Yeah. A lot of people are not here, so let's. We have two. I will just go to their presentations.
Okay.
So it's Sil. Sil, you are already in the call. Can you please unmute yourself? Hey.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much, and thank you for interesting presentations as well. So my name is Sila Sepp. I serve as the community lead at My Data Global, which is an international nonprofit organization based in Helsinki, though we work globally. And our purpose is to empower individuals by improving their right to self-determination regarding their personal data. And I love that the question came up regarding the security of the data, as well as how to actually use that data to also make cities more sustainable, more efficient, and more empowering. So in the context of cities, we also do a lot of work together with various partners to explore various mechanisms for creating more efficient but also more empowering solutions that would make also the relationship between organizations and citizens more balanced and trustworthy. Would it be then in the mobility, construction, transportation, energy, or public administration, or other sectors, domains? And there have been multiple pilots across Europe, but also around the world. And recently, one of our members, a think tank called FING, actually released also a cities playbook where they introduced different governance models like civic data trust, data cooperatives, personal data clouds, etc. To that all would are aiming to use data for improving the quality of life for people and making sure that the individual digital rights are also protected. And multiple cities, like for example, the Helsinki in Finland have actually published together with other organizations their joint call for a shift from reactive to actually proactive use of data that will benefit citizens to design systems and solutions in the same direction as other cities have started, and while getting also inspiration from the My Data principles that are described in the My Data Declaration. So all this makes it possible to actually make cities more sustainable and most of all empower the people living in those cities to not only benefit actually the already privileged communities, but also support others to overcome the challenges that they might face in the urban context. So my pitch here is to add a second or additional layer to today's topic, and to also see how personal data can be used to empower individuals in living in a urban context. So I invite you to all get in touch to learn more. I leave here my contact details and some resources where to learn more about my data. Yeah, let's make cities more efficient, sustainable, and empowering. So looking forward to get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Celia. Our next presenter is Tiziana Ponte.
Hi, good afternoon. Congratulations for the initiative and congratulations on the lecturers and thank you for the presentation. My name is Tiziana Ponte, and Bridge is the company that we work with, and I'm the head consultant in Bridge. I'm myself an architect and urbanist. We work with cities, most of them in Brazil. I'm recently in Portugal, and we work as counselors for sustainable development. And I'm doing my PhD in development studies here in ZEG, in University of Lisbon. I have a lead green associate by USGBC credential. I'm working with cities in my country and trying to help them to empower, guide, and support municipalities and parishes in aligning and localizing the SDGs, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development as a whole. So what we do actually is we have many strategies. One of them is to sensibilize citizens and stakeholders involved in the municipality and public and private partnership, constructions and initiatives to sensibilize them in trying to align the initiatives with the 2030 Agenda. We also do the alignment of local plans, policies, and actions that municipalities work with. Sometimes the municipal master plan and laws and norms, and try to see how they are aligned with the sustainable development goals. In this process, we can also identify what are the gaps. And most of the times we can help a lot with the innovation gaps, trying to see what's missing there and what can leverage the potential for the achievement of some of the SDGs. And most of the times we can prioritize what's the most important ones and not for that municipality. And we can support the municipality in the implementation and monitoring also. So here I leave my contact telephone and email and my LinkedIn. I work a lot with LinkedIn, so you can contact us there. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Ponte. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you very much for all the attendees. Thank you very much for all our panelists today. Just a reminder that next week we will have 3 days again, as I mentioned at the beginning. On the 25th is the tech panel, and we will carry out what discussion today regarding manufacturing and sustainable cities on the 27th, where we will discuss how the technologies are going to, how the different 4 technologies can work together and help us in order to tackle the issues that we have talked about today. And then we will finish with the public policies, funding and landscape open call opportunities on the 29th of May. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a nice day and a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, and thank you all.
Antonio, are you still here? You are muted. Hello?